Perfect. So it is the 11th of April, 2024, April already. This is the design review call number 37 with the Bitcoin Layers crew. Jakob from the community actually introduced us to you guys, so very grateful that for the introduction. Yeah, we're just how we do these design review calls is you can maybe do a bit of an introduction to your project, who you're aiming to serve, who is your user audience of your project, how you'd like us to be of help to you as well in terms of looking at the user flow. What we've learned in the past is looking at a very specific part of the user flow and getting feedback there is very useful. Because then we can move forward really quickly and give you very specific feedback. And then, of course, if you have a Figma file to share, that's always welcome. So yeah, I'll hand it over to the Bitcoin Layers team to introduce the project. And very happy to have you guys here. I know quite a few people in the community are a fan of your work and what you're working on. So thank you for being here.
No, of course. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to join the call. Yeah, my name's Janus. I'll allow Red to introduce himself. I'm the project lead for Bitcoin Layers. I focus more on like the operations and comm side of the project and help with research where I can. The project is essentially inspired by this new wave of things that call themselves Bitcoin L2s. I'm very familiar with like the concept of like rollups, whether they be on Bitcoin or Ethereum. So it seems like the Bitcoin ecosystem is now trying to adopt a lot of the scaling technologies from other ecosystems in the space. And kind of the issue with that is that Bitcoin doesn't quite have the infrastructure in place to support these technologies in like a non-custodial way. So there's a lot of risk that users are going to be taking on when they interact with these protocols. So we are building this website to document all of the risks associated with these new types of scaling protocols and additionally the infrastructure that supports them. And we're looking to just build a very simple website, but I feel like there is definitely a lot of UI improvements that we can make, because myself and Red are neither designers. So yeah, that's something that we definitely want to focus on to make it as welcoming as possible. So just everyday Bitcoiners can go on there when they hear about these new projects and learn about the risks. Red, I'll allow you to introduce yourself. I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, I'm Red. I am also on the Bitcoin Layers team doing some research and some product from the perspective of software development, actually building out the website. And not to get too much deeper into it, because Yanni's kind of hit it on the head, we're trying to create an educational tool, really. And, we want to convey the information in the smoothest way possible. I think you're on mute.
Adrian, you're here as well. Do you have anything to add as well? And also Michael, Christoph, Uti. I know, Christoph, you might not be able to talk at the moment, but if you have any questions, just put them in the chat. Yeah.
Not right now. I'm just excited that something like this exists, because I don't have an overview at all. So I think it's pretty worthwhile to doing something like that.
Nice. And in terms of, Christoph has a question. I'll read it out. I'm curious to hear back the current focus. I'm curious to hear back the current focus of the project and how it's organized. Are there enough people reviewing projects?
Yes. So we currently, the way we're going to be structured is we're going to be, Red and I will be the two main, Red's going to be doing most of the research. I will double check that research just before we release it. We also have like a community. We also post it like in our community chats and allow people to review it as well before we release it. We are going to start onboarding community contributors. to potentially do risk assessments if they want to, but we're probably going to take on the brunt of the work. And we're also, we're going to be forming a research company, for lack of a better term, where this will still be like an open source project that the company focuses on, and that will allow us to take on some resources for things like advisors and things of that nature. So we have some people that are relatively well known in the space that will also be like advising us on the research frameworks and things of that nature. So that's
it all lives in an open source GitHub repo. So we've had one person in our Telegram reach out and say, hey, I know a lot about rootstock. Can I jump in on that one? We said, yeah, we've got a template, some instructions in the repo, and you can just, make a PR. And, and then the same process from there, but a community review.
So the goals, if I understood it correctly, is providing this educational platform or set of resources or website, which is presenting basically all of these layer 2 solutions and letting people know the risk that they might encounter when interacting with these various layer 2s. And you have a basic UI built out at the moment, but you guys are not, UX designers. Are you working in Figma files at the moment, or are you developing just straight away?
Yeah, I created an initial Figma file that I can pull up here, but Red took that as inspiration and then essentially developed the site against that specific framework. But it's had some edits since going live with the site.
Yeah, I've been bad. I've been freestyling without changing mockups.
So Christoph has commented, it's a little similar to Wallet Scrutiny in the sense that it does security reviews and makes those publicly digestible, right? And then he shared the link to Wallet Scrutiny. Are you familiar with Wallet Scrutiny?
Yes, Jakob shared this with me, and yeah, so familiar with it. And yeah, this is kind of like, I would say, a similar type of design that we would want to go for,
right?
With it in their site, yeah.
Well, you're very lucky because Christoph, who designed that website, we worked together on that project. He is here on this call. So that's
that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. So would it make more sense to look at the actual live website at the moment as opposed to looking at the Figma file? Because it feels like you guys have, the design has already been implemented and maybe there's possibly been some changes there as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there a link to share maybe, and then you can give us a little bit of a walkthrough of your thought process behind the current? I don't know if you're familiar with the screen share option here on Jitsi. It's just at the bottom panel. If you're on desktop, it's the third button from the left, and it says Start Screen Sharing.
Yeah. Red, do you want me to share?
Yeah, you can drive.
Okay, so I see Start Screen Share. Let's do window. All right, let's see if I'm doing this correctly. Can you guys see the website?
Yep.
Okay. So essentially what we are looking for here is that it's a very simple UI. I think adding like where it says layers, infrastructure, and bridges, potentially like an intro text to kind of let people know what this is, but we're allowing people to look at projects that are announced. We want them to be able to sort through whether they're announced on testnet or if they're on mainnet. And they can also look at, whether it's like a rollup, a side chain, a state channel, similar to Lightning or state chain. We'll also add other types of scaling protocols there as we build out more. And then you'll have the ability to decipher whether the settlement of the chain happens off the Bitcoin layer 1 or it's on the Bitcoin layer 1. So if the project's risk review is complete, you would then click into the specific project. Getting an error on this. See if it.
My fault for debugging in prod.
It's all good. Red, can you share and show a local host if that's okay?
Yes.
Or Fedimint is working properly, I think.
Yeah, infrastructure pages are up. I just made a change to the layers. I did not know we were doing this at 7 a.m. I thought it was 8 a.m. So
Okay, so
Giannis, if you want to share again, you can go to the infrastructure pages, and I'll have the project pages working by the time you're done.
okay, cool. So this is how, and can everyone see the Fediman page?
Yep.
Cool. So this is how a page would look. So it's a little bit different for the specifics. So like if you're looking at a side chain or Lightning, you would have some information here as well related to like the amount of Bitcoin that's locked in the specific protocol. You would have a quick pie chart or a risk score to show like the essential overall high level risk review of the protocol. But here we would just say like for a specific protocol, we would give a description, add some of the risks that are associated with using the protocol. This is incorrect, but I have to change this because I talked to the Fediman team about this. But you would see how the protocol would inherit Bitcoin security. So for this, they would only be that Fedimans don't rely on like another alternative token to secure the consensus. And then we go into the specific technology that the layers enable, and then the use cases that are supported. And then at the end, we have some TLDR information. So the goal of this is to just basically show if I'm a new user to a protocol, I can go see the risk, and then I can check out also the use cases and why I might want to, for example, give up custody of my assets. That's what we're trying to show here. So these are the specific use cases that people might be interested in to interact with a Fediman specifically. So that's how a project page would look for infrastructure. And then the specific layer protocols are extremely similar. And then we have an FAQ page as well, which I would want potentially this to also mimic something like this. Also, for the blog and the docs, we just go to external sites, so a Gitbook and a Medium site. But I wouldn't mind actually figuring out how we could have those also live in like a similar flow to this, where it's kind of just like blocks where people have like a nice and easy to understand flow, but they can get all the information pretty easily. So that's essentially it.
I'm just going to jump in with thank you for sharing that. I mean, just as compliments to you guys, I know how it works with open source development. It's often very small teams, and you just have to make it work. So, just kudos to you for what you've produced so far. There's nothing, don't feel like it's terrible or anything like that. As you mentioned, you're not designers. So it looks great in terms of, what you've managed to put together so far. So well done.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christoph asked a question here as well, is each of those descriptions unique to the project, or are they a standardized bit of text?
So
They're unique. We're
everything.
putting it all into JSON files, and then we have one template for layers and one template for infrastructure that pulls the specific information. So we have a bit of flexibility in terms of what sections are in a description, and that'll auto-populate the little navigation bar on the left, which might be a little bit more useful to look at now that I just got the layers pages up while that's deploying. But it is dynamic in terms of the data we're pulling in. So it's not going to be like that part's already built in.
So that means that there is not all pages have necessarily all the sections. Like probably everyone has a description, but not based on what's in that JSON file. The components on that page will be there or not, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I came late, so I maybe missed that. But what's the difference between infrastructure and layers? Is there like a strict difference?
Yeah. So the difference from an architectural perspective is we just have a handful of different variables in there. Variables being things that are important, whether we have BTC locked as an item in layers pages, because that's something we pull into their page, and that's not a relevant data point for the infrastructure. So they're pretty similar, but we kept them as separate templates and separate sets of attributes, like separate data structures.
I'd also say that I think that layers are probably more protocols that users are going to be interacting with directly. So for example, if I'm a user, I can interact with a specific module or protocol that is powered by Fedimint framework, but I'm not interacting. Like I'm interacting with like a specific implementation of that. So like if there's like a Fedimint that supports like general purpose smart contracts and DeFi, we can have a risk review on that specific implementation for the layer category versus it just being like an infrastructure protocol. Infrastructure also is very, I would say, a lot more specific to things like rollups and side chains as well, versus things like Lightning and other protocols.
Yeah, from the user perspective, the infrastructure page is, you deal with infrastructure if you are building your own layer. So it's like that idea of, I can interact with a specific state channel with Lightning Network, but you're not using state channels in general. You're using a specific instantiation of one. So
Okay.
the layer is what the user actually uses. The infrastructure is something a builder might use to build a layer.
So like with Fed, like because you put Fedimint in infrastructure, so in that definition, like you would need to analyze each mint separately in layer and
Right.
Fedimint as a technology in infrastructure.
Yep.
That's tricky. It's tricky.
I'm just going to read out some of the comments Christoph is popping in here. So, I know Jakob shared the wallet scrutiny project with you guys as well. And this here on my screen is the methodology page, which describes basically all the questions that are run through during the review process. So it's the questions that the wallet scrutiny team are asking themselves as they're going through the review process. So, and then this is kind of this sort of drop down going into the nitty gritty details, and I'm guessing there's some similarities in terms of how the process or methodology that you guys use to review the layers. Is there something like this that that you guys are maybe have on the website at the moment, or maybe thinking to put together?
So we have a framework. It's in a separate website. It's in Gitbook, but I posted it in the chat. We have a framework for how we view these things, and I think that we could probably take the information from that framework and create like a laundry list of questions here. That would be helpful to review these things against.
And then another one from Christoph is, it's a tricky challenge with these things is that often users want to see a single risk score, so a single score, but then it's super hard to compress a complex security review into a number. Yeah, that was definitely one of the challenges with wallet scrutiny as well. Yeah.
That is a
Yeah.
challenge. It's timely though. We've been trying to figure out, again, kind of in our community in this Telegram chat of people we have that are interested in this same point, trying to create down layers by. We'll ignore infrastructure for a minute and just discuss the layers. We have these 4 criteria we're using, and we have put in an initial weighting of, adding up to 100%, something that we can calculate a single number out of. If we have a 1 through 5 score for these 4 things, they all have different weightings, ranging 40%, 20%, however it be. So we can distill it down to a number that way. I think as we continue doing reviews, we might find some issues with, it being reductive maybe for some of these, but it's something we're going to try.
All right. Should we move on to maybe like the actual design review process in terms of suggestions and that, and we can maybe just start with the page that you guys feel would be the most useful to look at right now, and then I know Christoph is posting his messages chat, so he can post in there, and then we can all just chime in terms of ideas and looking at the design itself. Is that maybe an idea for the next sort of half of the call?
Sounds good.
Yeah? Which screen would you guys like to look at? All yours.
I will say the home screen.
All right, let me go there.
Table of layers on it, yeah.
All right, shall I can share it on my end, and then we can just everyone can just sort of chime in. So it's this one, and I'll share this one. There we go. All right. Is this the home screen?
No, that's the
This is something else.
that's a I think Bitcoin Layers was inspired by this project, and it's basically something similar but for Ethereum custom, so like analysis of Ethereum L2s.
Yes,
risk
absolutely.
analysis.
But the link I sent just above Jacob's comment has the URL you're looking for.
All right, gotcha. Here it is. Let's jump in. It seems to be just dancing a bit on my screen. Is that something? Okay, it stopped. All right. Yeah, let's dive in. Michael, Jakob, feel free to begin. I will just listen.
I mean, just first, like I had this thought, like this. The most important, at least for me, about this project, what's the most important is just to understand the risks, right? So for me, and it's less important if we call it this particular layer, I know L2 or it's layer or it's a separate blockchain. For me, that's a secondary discussion. But the most important are the risks. And just seeing this, we see this color indicators, but they don't say much. I mean, I know if you hover them, there's just a scale, but there's no info about what these colors relate to. So I would prefer these risks to be somehow summarized in one word, but visible in the table itself. As no, I don't want a single number. But if you go to L2Bit, like I think they do it quite well. So they have
Page
different.
0, 1, 2.
If you go to Mo, if you go to the link I sent.
Yeah, cool. I'll pull it up on my screen. Share this tab instead. Here we go.
Yeah, so here you have basically colors, red, yellow colors in the table. So like immediately you can see how much problems the layer has. And then I guess the details are, when you hover, there's maybe some different info, particular details. So with this, I see like immediately I see, okay, these all seem not safe, or at least I can understand much more risk just immediately looking at this. So I think that's the biggest issue I have right now with the homepage.
Okay. And
However, I just add, I think it's also difficult with Bitcoin layers in a way that, at least in Ethereum layers, most of them are quite similar in the architecture, I think, in a way that I think all of them or most of them are, not all of them, but most of them are EVM chains. Basically, all of them are blockchains, I think. And there's just how they are coming back to the Ethereum chain is different. But there's a lot of similarities between them. And with Bitcoin layers, it's a bit more difficult because now we have this Cambrian explosion of this EVM chain, EVM layers coming to Bitcoin, which will have some similarities like in Ethereum, but you also have this completely strange, completely different architectures, like Arc, like Lightning, like state chains, like Fedimint, like eCash. So it's even hard to come up with a single table from which you can look at them and like compare them in a way like it's on L2Bit on this website. So I think that's a challenge.
it's an interesting point. Sorry, Jakob, continue.
No, that's it.
There's an interesting point Christoph made is that the numbers on the left sort of give this feeling of ranking. And then, another comment that Christoph made was if you just scroll through here, you just see all of these reds and yellows. And it's almost like like for me as a user, when I arrive on such a homepage and I see red and yellows, I'm like, this is not safe. Stay away. It's like, are there any greens here? Take me to the green.
Yeah, the last one, the last one which no one uses.
I want to see
Because
the green.
They are red and yellow for good reason. The truth is they are not safe. And the Bitcoin layers, I would argue, are even less safe than the Ethereum layer 2s.
Right. So yeah,
like that. They
Yeah,
are right
TVL is the metric they use.
by the amount money is in those layers, and the only green layer is the last one, which no one uses. Which is interesting. But maybe that's the good. I mean, if something is dangerous, I wouldn't. I mean, I'm not sure what the solution Christoph came up with. You're talking to, but I think it's fair to show danger if there is danger, right? And just allow users to use it if they are okay with that risk. You're not sharing.
Yeah, I also looked at the L2B page and kind of convey the level of risk, and maybe in that hover pop-ups say, okay, it's the risk because of this and this and this. Maybe display the subcategories in that pop-up. So that's going to make it much more, let's say, visually much more, let's say, subtle and elegant than the L2Beat website. Because for me, the L2Beat is it's so busy that I don't know where to look first.
For example, for me, it's less important if it's sidechain or spider chain or rollup. For me, it's more important if I lose money, or if I can withdraw money, or like if there's trust in the bridging. So those are, yeah, I prefer to see those type of information than the type of the layer. I think the type could be inside, or maybe some filters. You know, the filtering could just show type without showing it in the column, for example.
Yeah, I see some of the logic with that. So a couple of the points we actually have on that page, which would be type, BTC bridge, and settlement, those three are part of the overall risk assessment. We didn't color code them to outright say what's good and what's bad because none of them are exactly binary. So I think this is maybe a fundamental difference with wallet scrutiny and what we've put together is our criteria are not binary. So in the BTC bridge category, you could have a smart contract, you could have a federated one of N. In general, one of these is less custodial than the other, but in practice, there's a lot more nuance, which is why it needs a fleshed out risk analysis. And then, so we're kind of giving like the category it's in, but then after the analysis, that color coding of, maybe the dots on the risk is what like the analysts take on it would be saying, okay, it's of this type, it is of a side chain, which, generally speaking, side chain less safe than a state channel if we're talking custody. But there's always a little more nuance to these things. So we just didn't really color code those, but other than the purpose and the BTC locked, those points on the home screen are relevant to risk. So I'm thinking, I do like the idea, like add a little bit more to these hovers. Medium, low, high does not really mean a lot. We need context for what they correlate to.
Yeah, that's one thing, and another thing is if you rely only on colors, then for colorblind people, it's not going to work really well. But I actually like it. I mean, you know where to look for the risk factors, and if it's kind of broken down into also the kind of these, say the 4 risk factors that you have, then it's probably all you need, and you don't need to color code everything in all the other columns, because people can then go to the details.
Yannis is just commenting here that he's severely colorblind. So that's interesting. You have a person on the project who is colorblind. How interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, like, if we could though, like, because I feel I do like this wallet scrutiny layout, and I really enjoy the design, and I feel like we have there's like 1 or 2 main criteria that you have to really meet to be considered like a layer 2 in my opinion, and I think in a lot of people's opinions as well, is that you have to enable this thing like unilateral exit. So if I deposit BTC into the L2, I can take it out with an on-chain transaction, and I don't have to trust another third party or another consensus protocol to do so. So I'm wondering if we could have maybe that be the binary question if we had this wallet scrutiny type layout, and then we could then dive into the nuance of like the various, or maybe we could have that question and then like what the purpose of the layer is, because there are people that might want to interact with a side chain, for example, instead of, let's say, Lightning, because they want to have more programmability and they want to have, like they want to leverage like a borrowing and lending protocol or a stablecoin protocol. So maybe like listing out like that as well to maybe describe why people might want to take on the risk of not having unilateral exit. I don't know how you can clear, because I don't want to say like if you don't have unilateral exit, you're not useful. Like I think Fedi mints are useful in certain circumstances. I think side chains are useful in certain circumstances. I'm just trying to figure out like how to best display that as quickly as like simply as possible.
Yeah, that goes into. But I have a booth now finally, so I can talk. I love this project, by the way. Yeah, that's something I was thinking about too. Is if there's a way to clarify the use cases and how this all fits in, like eCash is great because there are no fees, right? You just have this very simple, cheap, private entry point, but then of course you give up some trust. It's custodial, but there's a trade-off and it has its place. And then on the other hand, you have probably some project that will be reviewed and just be basically categorized as scams. Strong recommendation against. So I don't know, I'm just curious if it is possible to identify use cases and then just label by those use cases. Because in the end, there will be some people who come here and they already use something and they want to review if they should continue to use it, if they can trust it. And then there are other people who might come and say, well, I want to do whatever, lending or cheap payments or whatever it is, and they want to know what they should use. Then how could they, based on what they're looking for, find the right project or network or whatever to work with?
There's this purpose column, right? General and payments. I think that's the biggest distinction now. But it's also gets kind of blurry with, well, I guess there are no smart contracts in Lightning. Yeah, but like with RGB, I guess there's, yeah, it may get blurry as well. And also, I guess some programmability chains can also be good payment. That's why general, I guess, it's a, no. But I agree with Christoph that I think, like, I think it's fine to use risky stuff if you're aware of the risk and just like the trade-off and like understand the trade-off, right? So we shouldn't say, oh, this is bad because I don't know, you give up a custody, let's say, or there's this multisig. I think we should say clearly there is a multisig or there is this risk, but it maybe, like you said, it does well this and this, right? But I think where we should really warn about is like a false advertisement. And I don't mean layers calling themselves layer tools, because that's just, I guess almost every layer does this. I wouldn't care about this, but I mean, if they say they are decentralized, or if they say they are, if they basically lie about some property of the chain, and we kind of can prove it's a lie, then I would put a warning about it, definitely, or something like this.
Yeah, I was curious about that editorial decision. At which point you really say like something is misleading, and whether to put those on a separate page, or I mean, if let's say you don't want to rank, but I think filtering out stuff in a separate category that is just so obviously and so clearly something people should stay away from, where you do want to list it so people can actually look it up, even though the people who run the project might have a real problem with it. I don't know. That's kind of an editorial decision where it gets a bit, it could potentially get a little bit risky, because those projects, and if they have some VCs or whoever, they might get mad. I know with wallet scrutiny, some of the projects were not happy and they got a bit intense about some of the reviews. That's just also something to consider. I mean, I personally see, when I see most of these L2s that pop up, most of them are just nonsense. I would totally throw them in like a stay away section.
Oh, Adrian is like, the goal is not to make people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll let Red add on to this, but I think the initial editorial decision that I've made on like what we don't cover is if it's doing like a public token sale and it has no code or no docs or anything like anything available. Like there's a few of those that are out there that are like, oh, and they're popping up on like the popular other L2 lists, and it's just like, yeah, they're just like selling NFTs or trying to get people to send them tokens. So those are the ones that we're not currently including.
Would you, just like there's this binary thing about the unilateral exit, would you also have a binary thing about whether it's Bitcoin only or they just have their own token?
We have that in the security assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually writing a blog tonight on how to at least my view on like the token discussion, because it's pretty nuanced, especially when you get into things like roll-ups. So yeah, but we do have that in the security assessment if it needs another token to operate.
And so for some of these that are marketing ones, would you consider having a section that says saw it, but not going to deal with it? You know?
We'll probably create another list in like a blog or a Notion page, and we'll just
Yeah.
make that public. Yeah, probably would do that. Red, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so one design choice we made that was maybe editorial was that by default on the homepage, a filter is put in place to only show layers that are live, and then the ones that are live get filtered to the top in just the default sorting of this. So that hopefully helps with some issues where, hey, maybe something has launched. If it's not live, we don't know if it's legit. We're not reviewing it, so we're also not putting it front and center. The only things that are actually being put front and center, they've actually shipped a product, which really filters out most of the scams. Not all. I think we'll have to figure that out when we get there. But for something that's just launching a token with no project live and really feels like an outright scam, the system we have in now, it will not be shown unless you go and click some buttons to go find it. And then you'll see, oh, this thing has just been announced, which many legitimate projects, of course, haven't launched, but they're not going to be shown to you right away.
Okay, that's great. It feels like a search would be helpful for that too, so
Yeah.
people don't necessarily have to click through and figure out what's hidden.
Yeah, if they've used a layer, it's similar to audit scrutiny. If they've used a layer, they can just start typing in the first few letters and it will just pop up. Yeah.
This is a really fun design challenge. I like it.
It is a very big design challenge.
I think in this project it's very useful to like really think about personas, because I see at least three personas, maybe more. So one is basically Bitcoiners, like kind of Bitcoin only people who maybe use only Lightning, maybe use Liquid, and then we are coming into this situation when there's a lot of people moving from this EVM chains building on Bitcoin. So that will be the other persona, the users of EVM chains coming from Ethereum. They're kind of trying to use this Bitcoin L2s. One is these Bitcoiners who never used EVMs. And I think both of these groups will look at this page in a very different light, and they will understand it in a very different way. And the third one would be just beginners in crypto who didn't have much experience with Bitcoin nor EVM, Ethereum chains. And they will also look at it a bit different way. And it'd be nice. I see this project as a kind of, I hope it will be like a great resource for all of these groups, because I think you could easily make it good just for one group, and the other group would say it's a bad resource because they use this term instead of this term, or they use I don't know, this variable which we don't agree, right? I think it's a big challenge, but also a nice goal to have this kind of neutral resource that would be good for all of these groups.
It's funny you say that, because I wouldn't say I'm a complete Bitcoin maximalist, but I'm pretty close. Like the L2 I use the most is Lightning. I use things like Monero too sometimes, and then Red, I would not classify him as like a traditional Bitcoin maximalist. So we get into discussions about this a lot, which is actually quite nice, because
that's a good balance.
We see the world a bit differently.
I think it's great because there's not much projects where these groups overlap, right? And because some of these topics are controversial, so there's a lot of internet flame wars. But I think this project can be actually a place where there's a very constructive, balanced discussion about it, and basically forces a consensus between those two groups in a way. I mean, I hope it will roll out that way, but I see also risks of not going out that way.
Yeah, I mean, with our initial framework when we released it, like people that are from this more like new kind of EVM user base type, that have maybe traditionally been more focused on things like Ethereum, to people like the some of the biggest Bitcoin maxis on Twitter like shared it and were like, this is cool. So I think kind of having both sides of the aisle appreciate the framework, I think was a really positive sign that I think we're doing this pretty neutrally, which was good.
It's good that you're
Yeah.
getting this sort of positive feedback out the door, which means that you have done something right with the current design in terms of showing information. Yeah.
I'm another question I have is I was wondering if some of these layers, they come out of VC funded companies working in stealth, which is very different than something like Lightning that has evolved over many years, and the idea has been around forever, and it's stuff that is just really more public, open source, and organic. Is that a consideration?
For me, no. In the initial design, I thought about in the section where it has like the token. I thought about including like information on like how the token was distributed. So for example, some tokens in these projects have like 10% of the allocation was like distributed to the founder, like the individual founder, in like a proof of stake type model, which I don't think is great. But I think the issue with that is that is such a gray area that I think the personal bias of like the people doing the reviews would come out. And we wouldn't be able to like standardize, like if it's VC backed, what's the distribution if it has a native token. I think it's just an easier thing to say, does it have a token, and does the token play a role in the security of the network or the bridge?
There is a way to include some of this information, and I think there is an angle where this works. So I'm not sure if it could be distilled down into something that could be in like the risk summary, but I think it could be on the page of just who are the core contributors. If it's one company versus, there are many, and it's a handful coming from a decentralized group. I mean, I don't know how deep we could dig into that to try to create something like tangible or like any type of rating on it, but I think it is something worth listing. Who are the core contributors?
Yeah, I think what's really important is it open source project? Then the second is the token. You already have it, but you said a very good point that is there like one node implementation or is there separate groups? Like in Lightning, there's I think 6 Lightning implementations basically, and because it's not consensus based, so it's interoperable, but not fully. So like some transactions are interoperable with some node implementations. But so it also has disadvantages, right? But it's really more decentralized, at least the development in that way. And it's I don't think it's something that you could put a color on, like it's orange, red, or whatever. But I think it's good information to show. Like this project has was funded by a VC, or this project has 4 independent teams working on it. This needs probably a bit more research because sometimes this info is hidden a bit. But for me, it's valuable. I think.
I just wanted to chime in as well. When someone, Jakob mentioned these 2 different user groups. Bitcoiners who are already using LNO Liquid, Ethereum people moving over, and then beginners in Bitcoin. Now, I'm guessing now at this initial stage, the main users, and correct me if I'm wrong, are Bitcoiners who are already using these networks. But something that the Wallet Scrutiny homepage does very well is it takes people through layers of complexity. So when they arrive on that initial home screen, things seem very sort of neutral and playful, and then they're giving the option to go down another layer. And they can go down a layer, and then they can see the whole breakdown, and then they can even go down another layer then again as well. And then at the bottom of the review page, there's linking out to the exact process that they use. So there's almost like these 3 different, layers. And maybe that's something to think about moving forward in this homepage is what is going to be the highest priority information that we can give to people at the first layer without overwhelming them with too much information? And then what's the second layer that we can then go into in terms of providing information? For me, when I arrive on this homepage, in my initial feeling, as being someone who's not very familiar with using layers, I was like, what is purpose and what is settlement and what is BT? Like I just my brain could not comprehend what all of those classifications meant. So I wouldn't have been able to make a decision around which layer would be right for me just looking at the homepage. So just allowing the layering to come through in the design is also something to maybe think about moving forward.
Yeah. Speaking of of the design moving forward, we're at 5 minutes to the hour.
Yeah.
And I wanted to. We have another call, some of us, coming up in 5 minutes. But I wanted to see what are some good next steps. I mean, I'd love to see some design process happening. I don't think it has to be super complex. I think it can be kind of organic, shooting back and forth some ideas and iterating on things. Jakob, sounds like you're pretty gung-ho on chipping in as well. Your video's gone. I don't know if you're still there, but maybe we could start, or look at your Figma file. And
I'm back.
Okay. So maybe we could kick off kind of a collaborative design process a bit and try to visualize some of those ideas that we talked about.
Yeah, work out loud in the community. Yeah.
If everyone's open to that. If
Yeah.
not, also cool.
That'd be great. So I have a Figma file I can share with everybody, and and we can start that process off. I can get that information to you all.
What's the best place for communication?
Do you have a Discord or a Telegram or something like that?
We have a Telegram, and it has a channel for this.
I think that the communication would be better if we did it in the Bitcoin design community.
Okay.
Because I think that's easier for you all. Like I think we can travel over. Red, is that okay with you? Are you okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it can bring more designers, so because they will see the project. So
Cool.
yeah, I think it's the best idea.
Yeah, we can let our community know as well that these conversations are ongoing. So yeah, let me do that. I'll get the Figma file. I will update it to. It's very similar to our website. It's just the colors are a bit different. So I'll update the colors in the file and I'll send that over.
You'll try to update the colors.
Yeah, I can try because I'm colorblind.
What
I can go
color?
to GitHub and find them.
Sorry, what color blindness do you have? Is it just that colors are shifted, or do they blend, or?
Yeah, technically I'm red green, but it's so severe that it affects like nearly every shade of colors. So I still see colors somewhat, but every blues are purples and greens are yellows and browns are reds, and it happens with everything. So it's just kind of all a blur sometimes.
So once I'm in the design channel, I have some notes that I took that sounded like, maybe consensus ideas between some of us. I'll share them in there once I'm in that channel.
Good stuff. Cool. So we'll see you in the Bitcoin design community. Which would be the best channel? Would we say the UX channel or?
Oh, can we create a separate for a project maybe? For this project?
Yeah.
That would be the best, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's communicate in the Bitcoin design community. I think Christoph has to go, so.
Well, you're in that other call too.
Okay, we'll catch up after the call.
I think it's going to be in this Jitsi room anyway. So.
Yeah, so we just need to kick out everybody else.
Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, for joining the call. It's been great just listening to what you guys are working on, and I love this sort of angle that you're approaching in terms of just educating people around the.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
But
thank you so much for the insights and the help today, and I'm excited to influence some of these changes we talked about.
Yeah, great.
Let's do it.
Thank you all.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
I'll stop the
Bye.
recording.